Good to see you all today. It's wonderful to see everybody. And I have I would say, a heart teaching today. Sometimes I just teach what I want to teach because I think it's good information to have. And, here's the way it works. I know that if I have something that is of interest and something that is really going to help me, then I always think there must be somebody else who feels the same way I do and has the same kinds of issues. My topic today is, what did I call it? Karma and healing of trauma. And it's basically about what is trauma and how to heal it. And if I were to give this teaching a subtitle, it would be, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So let's face it, we all have had some trauma in life, even if it's small. Everybody, it's part of the human condition to experience trauma. Now, whether or not it becomes a difficulty in our lives and sets us up for deeper problems, well, we have control over that to some extent. Now, as I get further going here, you'll see half the battle is just knowing what trauma is, especially what it is from a Buddhist perspective. If you're going to apply Buddhist solutions to problems, then you need to understand exactly what the definitions are and what the view is about such problems. So we do know that trauma it's going around. It's everywhere. I mean, we can even have secondary trauma. We can be traumatized by others' trauma. And as you'll find out, many of us have fallen in that category. It's exactly possible. So many people come to me actually throughout my career, even before I was a Lama. Before that, I did some time coaching and just people have come to me just in my life. And they have problems and they want to confide in me. And, then there are the people that have come to Buddhism that I personally know, that have come to my teachings and have been drawn to Buddhism for whatever reason. Very few of the people I meet as a Buddhist teacher come to these teachings because they're already perfectly happy and perfectly peaceful and they're perfectly content with their life and everything's wonderful. Very, very few people. Now, if you're one of those people, I'm very, very happy for you. If you really feel content and happy and like you really don't need anything else to be whole, great. But, I do suspect that we all, if we really look closely into our own thinking, we can find something that we can improve and correct. Now, some of the people that come to me, they actually have physical issues and challenges. So I once had a student come to me who had a difficult case of eczema. She was really inflamed in a certain part of her body. And she had this intuition that there was some underlying emotional issue that her body was trying to talk to her about. Her body was on alert. It was saying, hey, you've got this problem. And, I told her, look, I'm not a doctor. I've been to doctors. I've done all that. I still have this problem. I want to talk to you. I said, that's fine. No problem. So another student came to me after her husband died. And now at that time, she did not think that she came to me for another reason. I was doing something else for work at that time. But we started to talk about Buddhism. Anyway, the whole point is that she had some trauma of dealing with a husband for many, many years who had a long-term chronic disease. And so there was some healing that was there. Okay, so still others come to me with addictions. just fill in the blank. Addiction, we can be addicted to anything, literally. It doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol. It can be food, or it can be a lot of things. But the whole story is that many people who come here, not everybody stays, but a lot of people who come here, it's because something's not right. They just can't put their, some just can't put their fingers on what it is. They can't just say, okay, this is what's wrong in my life, but they just feel this dis-ease in their life. And then there's this other category. This is where I would put myself. I did not come to Buddhism looking for a solution to my problems. Oh, I had many problems, but I didn't come here looking. I didn't even come looking. I was in the category I would call like the denial bucket, just some denial and dishonesty and not quite facing up to things category, kind of out there in la la land somewhere. I just really had no idea that I was suffering. I didn't know at all. And I didn't realize that there was a way out of my chronic suffering. Once I did figure it out, I didn't have any idea. If I had known, I probably would have really been suffering, the suffering of suffering, right? There's the regular suffering, and then there's the suffering of suffering. And, I not sure that I would have come looking to Buddhism necessarily, but Buddhism has a lot of help in this area. So that's the basic problem. It sounds familiar. And actually, it sounds like the Four Noble Truths, doesn't it? Now, the reason the Four Noble Truths starts with the truth regarding suffering is that we human beings are actually pretty lousy at finding the root causes of our own suffering on our own. We're really lousy at finding out the root causes on our own. We need help. We aren't always able to do that left to our own devices for a lot of reasons. One of the chief reasons right now is there's so much noise. There is so much information in our world. There's just a lot. You wake up one morning, you have a problem. Who do you call? Well, do you go to the internet, or do you call your doctor, or do you call your lama, or do you call your wife or your friend? Who do you call? It's not always easy to know. It's not always easy to know who to trust. So if we were good at sussing out the root cause of our own suffering, we would not need Buddha Shakyamuni or the Four Noble Truths. And we wouldn't need our huge medical industry that's been created in our industrialized society. We would just be able to cure ourselves. If we knew the root causes of our problems, we would be able to spontaneously cure ourselves. And this, I 100% believe. But we don't. And so we have a whole complex of solutions. And I like to look at it like a pyramid, and right at the top is Buddha Shakyamuni, because Buddha knows us, and Buddha realized his mind. Buddha realized relative truth, and therefore became absolute truth. 100% pure love, 100% pure compassion, 100% pure wisdom. That was through the realization of his mind. What did that mean? Think about your own thinking. If you 100% knew your own thinking, then you would know the thinking and karma of every single other being. You would. So all we have to do is really, really know our own thinking and karma, and then we will know everything. So that's what Buddha did. And just like that, just like Buddha, if we knew the root causes of our suffering, we would be able to solve, we wouldn't have suffering anymore. We would be able to solve our problems. And if we could do that on our own, we would be Buddha. That's actually the definition of being Buddha. If we 100% knew what suffering was and knew all the solutions to every problem, we would already be Buddha. If we could do it on our own, we would be Buddha. So the other problem with the Four Noble Truths, the other problem of being a human being, if we had started with the causes of happiness instead of the causes of suffering, as human beings, we would continue to addict ourselves to what we perceived to be the causes of our happiness. We wouldn't go straight for ultimate happiness. We would go for short-term happiness, and we'd get stuck there. That's actually what a lot of us are doing every day. And that leads us right back to suffering, because obviously when we are addicted to the perceived cause of suffering instead of the actual cause, it's going to cause more problems in our life. And we'll never address the root cause of our suffering. So we cannot unaddict ourselves unless we address the root causes of our suffering. So, essentially we would be back at square one if we started with happiness. So this is the Four Noble Truths is a very, very wise path for us. And we keep everything that we do as Buddhists within the framework of the Four Noble Truths. You cannot go outside the bounds of the Four Noble Truths when you're talking about karma and trauma and healing and these kinds of things. And you're going to understand more of that as I get through this teaching. So the bottom line is we need help. We need help if we're going to solve our problems. And if we're going to get to whatever our personal obscurations are, whatever our personal addictions are, we need a guide. And that guide, we all use guides, right? So it's choosing the right guide for the right problem, right? So I need many guides. I just had somebody today at my house organizing my kitchen. I can't even organize my kitchen without a guide. But it's good to recognize the things we can and cannot do. And that is exactly, maybe I don't need a guide to do the laundry. That one I've got figured out, but I need somebody to help me learn to cook. I mean, do we learn these things mainly when we're younger? Well, yes, but not necessarily. So there's so many places in which we can use a guide. And we all need many guides. I know that's the truth for all of us. So we need guidance to drive to a new location. Some of us need guidance to drive to the locations that we've already been to. So everybody's different. We all have different obscurations, right? Some of us need guidance to eat well. So, the doctor sends us to a nutritionist. Or some of us need a guide to exercise properly. So we go to an exercise class. And of course, every single one of us needed guidance to finish elementary school and high school and college. And so guides are very important. Okay, so then the other piece of the puzzle here is that there are just so many guides. And when I found this lineage, I also discovered through a friend who was he was getting help for alcohol addiction. And at that time, I discovered that, wow, I think I was raised by alcoholics. Whatever he was going through, it sounded very familiar. Mine weren't treated, but so I thought that's interesting. So in my middle age, I had a revelation that I was raised by alcoholics, and suddenly I had this choice. Wow, should I do this Buddhist practice or should I do this 12-step practice, this program for families of alcoholics? Which path do I need? So for a while there were a couple paths. That's what it looked like to me at that time. What do I choose? Which one should I take? And that was for a while a real conundrum for me. And then I think back on other times in my life when I sought the guidance of a doctor or a therapist or a teacher or a life coach or a hypnotherapist or a mentor. There's so many, the list is endless. So we need guidance. We have lots and lots of guides. So how do we sort this all out? That in this complex thing we call life, how do we sort this all out? I want to address two questions here today. The first is, how is it possible to heal our traumas of the past? And then the second one is, how do we integrate Buddhist practice with other healing modalities, other guides that we might come into contact with? So this is really important to sort out. I've been through this sorting process, and I've learned a thing or two, and I'm still learning. And I wanted to just give you a little information here that can help you, and maybe you can help others as well. Okay, so I have we're going to look at 5 different headings, like subheadings for this teaching. The first is that we're going to talk about the teacher as a healer. We're going to talk about trauma as karma. We're going to talk about seeing healing modalities as the blessings of Buddha. And then finally, I'm going to pull it all together with aligning personal healing with right view and Buddhist practice. Okay, so that's where we're headed. This is obviously a big topic. We don't have to get through it all today. I wanted to give you more of an overview. If these topics are helpful to you, we can go in depth later on different things. All right, so let's talk about the teacher as healer. There's this really, really wonderful little teaching in the KLZ. It's early in the KLZ, page 22 in my copy, and it's called the 4 Assumptions. It's just a simple list, it's a teaching in a simple list, the 4 assumptions. Number 1, assume yourself to be the patient. Assume yourself to be the patient. Number 2, assume Dharma to be the medicine. Assume Dharma to be the medicine. Number 3, assume the Dharma teacher to be a skilled physician. Assume the Dharma teacher to be a skilled physician. And number 4, assume constant practice to be the treatment that will certainly cure the disease. Assume constant practice to be the treatment that will certainly cure the disease. So right out in the very beginning of the KLZ, we already have this metaphor of the teacher as a healer. Now, I really want to make it very, very clear. I am not a doctor, physician, psychologist, counselor. I'm not any of those things. I'm a Lama, which means teacher. I'm a practitioner, but I do consider myself, I do very much resonate with the idea of healer. I've identified with this archetype since I was a child. And really, what it comes down to is understanding that I don't want suffering. And I know that others are just like me, that they don't want suffering. I think healing always comes from a wounding. Healers there's this archetype of the wounded healer. I've never met a healer who wasn't wounded. I really believe that healers, and I'm not talking about just MDs or, chiropractors, or I'm talking about those who really feel a calling to heal themselves and others. And this is a huge, wide grouping of people that our culture doesn't really give us credit for. And so I would not equate medicine, or doctors with healing. I think there's a much bigger, I think not all doctors are healers. I think a lot of doctors are technicians. This is just my own personal opinion. You don't have to write this down. This isn't Buddha, right? My point is that healers don't have to be doctors, and that we can heal ourselves. We can tune into our own inner healer just by following these 4 Buddhist assumptions. Now, the Buddhist assumptions they're called just that, assumptions. they are assuming that you have a Buddhist worldview. And in that worldview, if you have a problem, then you're the patient. And Dharma, my 5 positive thinkings, that is the medicine. My 5 positive thinkings, that is the wish fulfilling jewel. It can do everything. It's the magic elixir. It's the elixir of everlasting life. It's everything you can imagine. My 5 positive thinkings, that is the medicine. And the teacher, if you have a guide, they're the physician that's going to give you the prescription. Or if you're healing yourself, you can consider yourself a healer. Or if you're helping others, even if you're just helping in a tiny way, just considering yourself as a healer. If you just visualize yourself as a healer when you pray for another person, for instance, that is so, so powerful. Why not? Our thinking is so powerful. Why not visualize yourself as healing them? And we do this practice in our lineage, actually. We do pray for one another. We do actually lay on hands. I mean, when we pray for another, we usually put our hands out like this. And, you know, we imagine ourselves, we visualize ourselves as Buddha sending light to that person. That is a sentient being, single present moment thinking, acting as if we are able to heal others. That is a very powerful and healing practice for yourself and for others. So that's just the kind of the base that we're starting with. That's just the viewpoint that we're starting with, that we can heal ourselves and others. Others can heal us. Sangha can heal us as that greatest condition for us, or that one of the conditions. And Buddha as the greatest condition for us is the greatest guide and healer. Because remember, Buddha was already where we are. Buddha has already been there. Okay, including what I'm going to talk about next, trauma. Okay, we really want to understand exactly what trauma is. I am very curious what people think trauma. How would you describe trauma? If anybody has any thoughts on that, I'd be very interested to hear that. You can either just unmute or you can put up the electronic hand and it'll move you to the front where I can see you. Anybody have any thoughts about what trauma is? Yes, Sophia.
I think it's an extremely strong emotions came from an incident. So my strong emotion came out from, I would say a trauma is I wasn't able to be at the bedside of my father when he died. And I didn't realize I carried that guilt. Mm-hmm. And I had been trying to ignore and quickly brush it away, you know, but it haunted me after 20 years. And yeah. That's eczema. I have a book to recommend, and that healed me. And of course, it's Dharma through my sister.
Good.
But I do feel very strongly that a lot of us, we don't recognize how it affects us and just quickly brush it away. I have friends next to me and, you know, very close to me, and, oh, it's okay. I just went for a vacation and come back. Everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not okay. I truly feel it's not okay.
Yeah. So you're making a really good point. It's something that it can be an emotional, what I'm hearing you say is that it's strong thinking. It's an emotion that doesn't go away by itself. It could be something like grief or guilt, right? And you know that, and when you try to not think about it, it comes back. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other ideas about trauma? Yes, Torsten.
I would say anything what violates or opposes our inner values.
So something that has gone against your deep core values, that can be traumatizing. Okay, good. Okay, and again, that, I mean, we have simple things like you can have a trauma to the head where you actually have a blunt object that causes this, a wound. But what we're talking about here, and I agree, we're mainly talking about emotional thinking kinds of things. Yeah. Okay, anything else? I'll give one more chance for somebody to say something. Yeah, Michael.
I think it's a lingering wound to body or mind that occurs from an incident that takes us out of safety.
Yeah. Good. Okay, I'm hearing quite a few things there. Lingering, body or mind, safe, lack of safety. Yeah, these are all really good. Okay, you're touching on many aspects. You see, trauma is one of those words that we use a lot, and we don't necessarily stop to think about what it is. And actually, trauma from a Buddhist perspective is negative karma. If you understand trauma, then I want to use this word trauma that we're all familiar with, and I want to explain to you how it's exactly negative karma. This is going to give you a handle to understand what negative karma is and what you can do about it. Now, if I said to you, you can overcome your negative karma, you just have to purify it, you'd say, great, awesome. But it's a little bit like a vague kind of thing, like, where do I find that negative karma? Like, what is it really exactly? Well, we've defined it, right? It's the power of your thinking. It's the quality of your thinking. It's the quality of your thinking. It's the energy of your thinking. So it's the energy of negative thinking that you've had in the past that lingers with you. Okay, still, you might say that's great, but I can't really think of some negative karma that I have. You can't put your finger on it. But if I ask you, name a trauma in your life, and don't worry, I'm not going to make you do that today. This is work that's best done privately, and I'm happy to work with anybody on this. It's fine. If you want to tell me about your trauma, I'll listen and help you work through it. But I don't think it's the best thing, because one of the things about it is that we don't need to traumatize others with our trauma. That we don't want to do that either. But doesn't that bring it home if I say, well, tell me about a trauma in your life? Even if you have more or less healed from it, you could still remember it and tell me what happened. Now, and that's not going to be true if I say, tell me about your negative karma. You're kind of going to go, what? Well, I know I have some, but I'm not really sure where or how or what. So if we begin to see how negative karma and trauma are related, we can really purify a lot of negative karma just by dealing with the traumas in our life, big and small. Some traumas last a week. Some traumas, have you ever had like a near accident in the car and you're like shaky, like until you get home and have a milkshake and then you're fine, and then you can't even remember it later? Yeah, so those are little traumas, right? For a while you hold on to it, you repeat it. Well, guess what? It's better if you don't come home and then text every single person you know and tell them about it. It's better if you don't come home and say, honey, guess what happened to me? And tell your husband about it and then call your kids. It's better, actually, it'll go away a lot faster if you don't do that. Why? Because karma is the repetition or the power of your thinking. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a major life trauma that you shouldn't talk about it and help and get it fixed. No, I'm not saying that. There are many modalities in our culture that can help us to deal with trauma. But understanding trauma is, from a Buddhist perspective, is going to help us access those healing modalities and it's going to help us to let go much more quickly. So we really want to understand that trauma, big and small, what we do with it is, what we do with negative karma in general is we tend to repeat it, and then it becomes a story that we repeat, and we keep it alive that way by telling others about it. Then we start dreaming about it, and then we have flashbacks, and all of that helps us to not let it go. And we want to somehow reverse that. The healing process is the process of gently, carefully and gently letting it go and replacing that kind of thinking with thinking about other things. So that, because it doesn't become, there are traumas, and people have traumas that they can do one of two things. They can either bury it so deeply that it comes out in unconscious ways, like addictions, or other psychological problems like obsessive compulsive disorder. So addictions or disorders or syndromes or things like that. And then years later you can get a diagnosis. Well, you've got OCD, or you've got fill in the blank, some syndrome. And nobody will ever, you don't know, and nobody will ever know what the actual source of that is, because it's been buried so deeply. Of course, we want to go gently and carefully with those kinds of things. Sometimes you don't need to know. And it's the same thing with negative karma. We don't have to know which lifetime created that negative karma to purify it and heal it. We don't have to know. We just have to let it go. Whatever the problem is right now, if we let that go, it'll take its whole history and cause with it. But when we insist on telling the story and reliving it and bringing it to mind, we're doing the opposite of allowing ourselves to let go of it gently. So there's that kind of trauma that is very deeply buried. Sophia just said that she tried to deny it and go on vacation and these things, it didn't work, right? Okay, now if it happens when you're a child, it's even easier to bury, because it's such a long time ago and you didn't have the tools that you have as an adult. Okay, the other thing that can happen is you make it the center of your life. This happened to me and I can't forget about it. I won't forget about it. I need to tell everyone about it. I need to make it the center of my thinking. I need to come back to it again and again and again. We can get obsessed with negative things in the past that we don't know how to let go of. We can make them the center of our attention. And that is what we generally are calling, we're meditating that. So remember, whatever we meditate, meditation is just repeating something 2 or more times. Now, if we repeat to ourselves every day, I was in a terrible accident. I was in a terrible accident. Poor me. I was in a terrible accident. Oh my gosh, my poor self. I was in a terrible accident. And then we begin to construct a whole world around that. Well, we're not going to heal from that. We're just going to increase the experience, and we're going to increase phenomena that are related to it. Now, we have to be very, very careful here. I'm going to talk next about the wrong view of the victim. In Buddhism, there is no such thing as victim, and we must be very, very gentle and careful with this, because we would never say that the people in Kiev deserve being bombed, or, oh, well, it's their karma, so what? Of course, we would never, ever do that. That is the opposite of compassion and love. However, what we do know as Buddhists is that every single thing that we have, see, experience, our bodies, all of our phenomena, every single thing was projected from our own karma, and our karma is the power of our own thinking. Of course, there are many conditions that contribute, but the cause is our own thinking. And we don't know as sentient beings, whether it's a past life or a present life, we don't know. But we can practice with our eyes wide open and say, look, I know that my thinking is the cause here. And the gentlest way to work with that is to say, you know, whatever thinking in my present or past thinking created this, may I never have that kind of thinking again. May I purify that kind of thinking. We don't have to, but the opposite of that is to say, oh, well, poor me, that just happened to me. Now think of a world where everything just happened to us, just randomly happened to us. Like if victimhood were actually true, this would be truly a frightening world. Now, if you really want to have compassion for traumatized beings, think about a being who is walking around thinking that whatever terrible things happened to them, it was an accident, it was random. That is a truly frightening place. That is a place to live from a lot of fear. You can see how people who have identify as being victims can often be very untrusting of the world. And sometimes for very good reasons, sometimes for very good reasons. So one of the things we'd like to do is to, and here's the other thing, we all identify as the victim at some place, sometime. We've all done it. We all will do it. We're all doing it. It's just very easy to say, oh, well, that happened to me. Oh, that guy hit me. Well, it's true. The car did hit you. The police officer was there and they saw it and they said he's at fault and his insurance company is paying. Great. We still have to acknowledge that we had the cause to be in that place at that time. And now, this doesn't mean that we need to beat ourselves up about that, but we do need to acknowledge, I had some negative karma ripening in that car accident. It's interesting. And my cat died, and my son got food poisoning, and it all happened in the same week. Okay, heads up, you're having some negative karma ripening. It's time to stop, take your time, take a breath and practice some Dharma. And what is the correct way to practice with this is to really identify that there's some negative thinking in the past that's ripening. Once this karma ripens, it can never ripen as that thing again. So you can say, I really rejoice that I am purifying my negative karma. That negative karma of that kind of car accident never needs to happen again. I rejoice that I'm purifying. May I fully purify that. Buddha, please bless me to purify my negative karma. So what we're saying is, we're in a healthy way, we're acknowledging that we had something to do with it. We're acknowledging that you can even say, I renounce the kind of thinking that created that karma. That is a beautiful thing to say. That puts the responsibility squarely where it belongs. And renunciation is the only way to purify that kind of karma. I renounce the kind of thinking that ripened in that car accident, and my pet dying prematurely, and my son getting food poisoning. I really regret that kind of thinking. Now that's going to give you a lot more control when bad things happen. And it's going to give you a plan for moving forward. So let's always remember that the wrong view of the victim in Buddhism, victims do not exist actually. So, and here's the other thing with the victim. When we have somebody that we put in the victim place, even ourselves, it sets us up to have pity or sympathy for them. And actually, pity and sympathy don't work in Buddhism. Why? Because pity and sympathy are emotions that harm us, and we don't want to harm ourselves or anyone else. Pity also harms the other person as well. So much better to practice renunciation and compassion. Remember, renunciation is compassion for yourself. And compassion looks like, may they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's okay when a family member comes and says, oh, this terrible thing happens, you know, especially working with children. You know, this was really good to be a Buddhist during at least part of my son's upbringing, because it really helped me to help him see that he had a lot more choice and agency in life. I didn't have to say to him, oh, poor baby, oh, that's terrible that happened to you, and those are bad people that do things like that to you. I could say, you know, we can have compassion for that bully or for that person that caused that accident and wasn't looking the right way. And we can also have renunciation for ourselves. And I also renounce my negative thinking that was the cause for my being at that particular place at that particular time. It's really good to have that kind of a tool, right? Okay, so, but victim, just coming just exactly from the victim place, that is not actually working in Buddhism. All right, so so that is why the victim mentality doesn't work, because it sets us up for self-pity and pity, and that is not going to help us to purify our karma, negative karma, and our obscurations. Okay, now there are many, many ways in which we can begin to heal from these kinds of things, short-term traumas and long-term ones. So, you know, I get into a fender bender and I get my neck out of whack and I can go see my chiropractor. That is a wonderful modality I can use. I could just complain and not go see a doctor, and I could get angry at the person who rear-ended me, and I could turn my medical problem into a very serious issue. Or I can say, you know what, this negative karma ripened. I renounce the thinking that caused this negative karma that produced this karma that projected this kind of phenomena for me. And, you know, but thanks to Buddha's blessings, I have a wonderful chiropractor. I'm going to go check in there and get that fixed. And Buddha, please help me to not have a cause like this ever again. That is a perfectly legitimate, and at the same time, Buddha, please bless the person who hit me. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Now, it may take a little while. I mean, you may 5 minutes later feel anger rising at that person who hit you. You may feel pain rising. And you can again apply the antidote: renunciation, compassion, praying for Buddha's blessings. We have so many tools. It's remembering. Maybe the first thing you want to do is to call a friend. Well, if you are a Sangha member and a Sangha calls you and wants to, and you know, has just had a traumatic experience, how can you help them? You can remind them to stop, to find their feet, to breathe, to relax. And you can say, you know, you can let them rant for, you know, a minute or two. It's fine. You know, like, oh, wow. And, you know, you sound very upset. Do you want some support? I'd like to support you. Are you willing to be supported in this? Yes. Okay. Well, you know, and then you can guide them through some renunciation or compassion practice. Help them let it go. The sooner you can get to them and help them let it go in the moment, the less likely they're going to be calling somebody else and rehearsing it, and then calling the next person. And the more we talk about it and tell everyone about it. And now, it's not to say that we deny that it happened. We do have to choose the right people to talk to. And we want to choose Sangha whenever possible, because they can help us to remember to practice Dharma. Why? Because that is the most quick way to heal any kind of trauma that we experience. And I really pray, may none of us ever experience a trauma that is so difficult that we need professional help. Of course, if we have that, then we need to get professional help. And we need to check in with our Sangha also. That is really, really important to do. So please do not deny yourself any healing, any modality at all. But please think of those things as Buddha's blessing, and know that while practicing Dharma, whatever strategy you decide to employ, whatever healing modality you hope to receive, you have the good karma to receive, it will work many times better when you're practicing Dharma. Think about going to the doctor and getting a prescription, and then you sit it on the table and you never take it. How well is that going to work? Well, it's not. So if you can think about using whatever modality that you engage in, and then taking your medicine and saying, thank you, Buddha, thank you for providing this incredible healing medicine, it's going to work 10 times faster. And I have talked to so many people who, I just had an appointment myself today with something, and the person was so amazed how quickly I'm, fixed the problem. Now, that's not because I'm a super amazing genius of any kind. No, I practice a little Dharma. I go in there with a good attitude, like this is a blessing for me. I'm really grateful to have this physical therapist on my side. I'm going to follow her guidance, just as I follow Buddha Shakyamuni's guidance. In fact, her guidance is Buddha's guidance. Buddha, is an amazing condition in my life. And so I have that condition of practicing Dharma. So I'm able to manifest and, find these kinds of healers in my phenomena. That's an incredible thing. Amazing. Okay. So how do we pull this whole thing together? This is basically what I'm saying. Aligning your personal healing with your right view and Buddhist practice. It means not, like, for instance, not expecting that the doctor alone can heal you. No, the doctor, just like Buddha, is only a condition. So when we have unrealistic expectations and we go to our healthcare providers, and then we get angry and cranky because they didn't wave a magic wand, or the surgery didn't work, or the pills aren't working, that is a time to step back and say, okay, my doctor, all of these incredible medicines, these are conditioned. What's my cause? Am I being hopeless? Am I being helpless? Am I being contrary? Am I following the instructions? What's my thinking here? Check, am I practicing Dharma? If I'm practicing Dharma and still things I'm not healing, that's a time to say, maybe it's time to try another avenue or path. But if I'm truly practicing Dharma, then really, if I were an enlightened being practitioner, it wouldn't matter which doctor I go to, I would still heal. So those are the two ends of the spectrum. Being a complete sentient being knucklehead, which we can do sometimes, and just like, no, I'm not going to follow the doctor's orders. I'm going to spend a lot of money and go and see this doctor, and I'm not going to take the pills. That's all the way on one end of the spectrum. Well, that kind of person isn't going to heal very quickly. All the way to the other end of being a completely enlightened being that already has the skills to self-heal. It doesn't matter whether they go to the doctor or not. So, every one of us is in a spectrum of these things. And we have to check and ask ourselves, are we practicing renunciation, compassion, faith, love, and wisdom when we seek healing from any kind of practitioner? Okay, I want to open it up for questions. This is just a very general teaching. We can always go into more in another teaching. Yeah, Terry.
Back to about you were talking about letting go of the trauma. I run into it a few times. How do you really know if you're letting go or burying it?
That's a really good question.
Because I
Yeah.
have run into this a few times where I've thought I've let something go and something will come up and trigger a response, and I
Yes.
have not let it go.
Well, let's first talk about letting go. It's not a black and white thing. It's there's shades of gray. It's not a once you let it go, it's gone forever. Because actually in Buddhism, we forgive, but we don't forget. So the question is, can you think of the thing and does it still have the same charge? If you can think of the thing and you can think, and right away you think, oh yeah, my dad, may he be free from suffering, the cause of the suffering, versus thinking of my dad and just going to a rage, or thinking of my dad and wanting to, strangle him, or, who knows what. There's all kinds of different kinds of trauma, right? There's anger and there's jealousy, or, I don't want him to be happy, So when we can think about an incident, or it kind of crosses our mind, and we are no longer charged up with anger, jealousy, greed, pride, or ignorance, then we pretty much let it go. If it does come up and we still have it, then it's like, oh, put that on your list for your practice. Tomorrow morning, oh, that's coming up. Maybe I should sit down. If it's strong enough, maybe I should sit down right now and just do some let go, let go, let go. Go ahead.
My rebuttal to that is that even specifically using father as an example, I've thought I've let it go. I've thought there's no longer any angst with it, and then I'll move on, and then like something else later down the line will happen, and I really haven't. And
No, that's okay.
I don't know,
Okay, so
let it go.
what I'm hearing in that is a little bit of self-judgment about, oh, I didn't do it right, or maybe I didn't, but it's really okay. Please know this, until you become Buddha, it's still going to be there. So everything's going to be a little bit, don't worry, until we become Buddha, we're going to have something. We don't know. Here's the thing about sentient beings. We don't know how much karma, negative karma or positive karma we have. And that's okay. It's okay to be okay with not knowing. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Terry, is just be okay with not knowing. And just, if it comes up again, you can say to yourself, oh, there it is again. And just, I think I'll do a little more let go practice on this. And there's no timeline. That's what I'm saying. It's not, there's not going to be like, oh, it's going to take you 5 practice sessions to get rid of this kind of trauma and 10 to get rid of that other kind of trauma. It's not like that, because we don't actually know how powerful karma that we have created. Yeah, it's okay if you need to go to concluding practice. That's totally okay to leave. Michael's already left. He's leading practice, so yeah. So I hope that helps a little bit. Report back and let me know how that goes. Just cutting yourself some slack on that and saying, I still got a little stuff going on, and have a little bit of gentleness. That the gentleness is really important when we're dealing with trauma. We don't want to re-traumatize ourselves. Don't traumatize yourself over your trauma. That you see how there is a self-perpetuating karma that happens with trauma. We just keep re-traumatizing ourselves by being negative to ourselves. Okay, Carrie was next.
I just have a question about something specific, but I'm sure it can generalize to other things. So if you have post-traumatic stress,
yeah,
let's say, and that kicks in when you're trying to speak in front of people.
Okay.
Then afterwards, you have a lot of negative emotions come up, let's say. How would you work with, you might like maybe it's related to, well, it's related to trauma, but you don't know exactly what trauma, that kind of thing. How would you work with something like that?
So it's really okay in Buddhism to just work with what you've got in front of you. You don't have to know what the origin is. We don't have to know the origin of every single one of our negative karmas to let go of our negative karma. So let's say for post-traumatic stress, and this is a serious problem, and people can work with a serious psychologists and psychiatrists and MDs, and there are a lot of people that can help with this kind of thing. But I'm just saying in general, you work with the symptoms, and you work with how whatever is manifesting in your body and your mind at that time, and you just work with that. So let's say in your form of PTSD, you have panic attacks. Well, panic attacks are something that we can deal with. We can stop, we can find our feet, we can just check in with our body and our breath, and we can just stop, and we can learn how to stave off a panic attack before it gets so bad that we're in the emergency room or that we have to take medication. And you work with, that's the thing, you work with your doctor and your Dharma teacher to do this. You don't just work with your Dharma teacher if it's something serious. But if something mild, maybe you just you just break out in a cold sweat. There are ways to look at that, at your thinking when that happens, and just to stop. And so it all comes down to mindfulness and awareness. And that's our practice, is actually training us to be mindful, to watch our mind and to be in our bodies, and to be in our body, speech, and mind. And even just 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, sitting and doing the preliminary practice of body, speech, and mind, which is the shamatha meditation that we do. Even just doing that 5 or 10 minutes a day, it's amazing how well that will train you when you're out in the field and suddenly there you are, it's your turn to speak, and all of a sudden you break out in a cold sweat and you're like, oh no, it's happening. Oh, well, just check in with yourself. Just check your body. Watch your breath. Ask yourself, hello, mind, what are you thinking? As soon as you go to observation mode like that, everything changes. And these are really legitimate practices that we're doing that are going to help you in your life. It's not just this is not a religious practice. This is not just a ritual that we're doing. We're actually taming and training our body, speech, and mind. And actually, when we're sitting in shamatha meditation, we're actually training our body to release the good hormones and the good medicinal, biological things that are happening in our body. We're training ourselves to react in that way. So the more we are consistent, doesn't mean you have to do it, doesn't mean you have to sit there for 2 hours every day, but the more we're consistent, a little bit every day, just a little bit every day, the more we're overcoming the habit. Now remember, trauma is a habit. That's a word we haven't used. Habit of thinking, that's karma. Trauma is education. Trauma is a negative education of our thinking. Now, I don't care how terrible the thing is that happened to you. If you keep training yourself to go there, that's not going to do you any good. So why bring something from the past to the present that doesn't need to be there? This is why we need to gently remind ourselves that it's okay to let some of these things go. So obviously that's going to be a little bit more work, releasing a very big trauma from maybe early childhood or something, than releasing a relatively lesser and more recent trauma. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. Anything else? Any other questions? There's many questions that can come. write down your questions. We can have future. I really would like to do a workshop on this. I'd like to teach people actually direct techniques to use when you have fill in the blank. There's so many different ways for trauma to come out. It can be, but okay, here's my favorite one. This is the one I do. For whatever reason, I just blank out. I just can't think, can't talk, can't, like a deer in the headlights. And that, that's what you do, Stefan. I don't do it very often, but it happened during a teaching recently. I just forgot the word that I wanted to say next, and that caused me to panic. And so I just sat there like frozen, like hopefully people thought it was the Zoom screen that was frozen. But it doesn't, that's the thing. I can laugh about it because it doesn't really matter what anybody thought. Like, really, that's so much part of it. We're stigmatized by these traumas that we have. We don't want anybody to know. And that's where your Buddhist practice can come in handy, because you can begin to have some compassion for yourself. You can, just like, maybe you're the kind of person that you're able to empathize with somebody else who's doing that. But when you do it, oh no, it's the end of the world. Well, treat yourself like you treat others. Or maybe it's the other way around. You're really hard on others, but you let yourself off easily. Well, cut your other people the same slack that you cut yourself. We're learning that we're all in this together. And if I am experiencing this, then I know other people around me are experiencing. If I have this suffering, then I know others have this kind of suffering too. It's inevitable. It happens. Yeah. So be gentle, everyone, be gentle. This is a really fraught topic, but we have to talk about it, because if we don't heal our trauma, then we're a condition for other traumas in the world. And, in some places in the world, trauma is not a good thing because it's very dangerous and terrible. And for us, it's more, we live in we live in more Pure Land than a lot of places. We have, well, hello, Betty. we have more access. Anybody who's in this room right now has some access. You have some education. You have a lot of access to a lot of good things. So that's really important thing for us to remember. Okay, I can stay a little while longer. If anybody has to leave, they can leave. But if anybody has anything more to talk about, it's totally good. All right. Well, perhaps we should call it a day and send in your topics for next week. Betty, I think we have a time issue problem. I'm not teaching at 6 anymore. I'm not sure the word has gotten out there. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Betty, I'll email you. I'll email you later. Yeah.
Okay. No,
But I mean,
I'm sorry.
You're welcome to stay right now, but
No,
and I'll
that's
make sure you
okay.
get the recording for the teaching. I would
Of
love
course.
that. I'll send you the recording.
I'll see
Okay.
you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so let's dedicate our merits. And Namo Buddhaya. For the true happiness of all beings, I will swiftly become Buddha in this very life. Therefore, just as all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dedicate, I joyfully dedicate all merit for every being to attain unsurpassable enlightenment. May all my dedications be pure, like the wisdom of Manjushri. May all my dedications be fulfilled, like the aspirations of Samantabhadra. Zaya, Zaya, Sutsaya. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Send me your ideas for teachings and have a really wonderful evening.
Thank you, Lama Carrie.
Thank you, Lama Carrie.
Have a
Have
good
a great
evening.
evening.
Thank you so much for the precious teaching.
Bye, everyone.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you all.
Take care.
There's some really profound stuff in that, Lama Carrie. It's just,
Oh.
I'm still kind of like,
Oh,
kind of rolling.
good.
there's really no, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking about, just there's no real